Hello, hello. We are now recording. All right. So let's first take a look at Bitcoin. We had the drop down to the 61.8 retracement of this move right here, which is where we found our right shoulder. This is kind of what I had been waiting for. We had this bull run up to the top right here. I had a feeling that this was going to be short-lived as the sorry, my dog's making all kinds of noise. So I advised waiting for that dip to make that right shoulder, which sure enough it did. We are now sitting at the neckline of this massive head and shoulders, and we are waiting to see what happens here. You can see that we wicked the neckline there and found some resistance. Now, I think just based on general market sentiment that we're going to see a breakthrough here. And when we do, I'm looking for around 10,400, 10,500 before we get a decent pullback. And then we'll probably continue on from there up to the 12,000 to 12.5 range. So let's talk a little bit about what that will probably look like. Now we have a trend line that has formed right here as well that we need to think about. So we have a trend line that's formed right there. And we have a couple different trend lines that we have to look at here. Now this blue one right here has turned into orange because it's now potentially going to act as resistance as well. So in order to complete this head and shoulders pattern, once you have a head and shoulders pattern, what you look for is for the area from the peak of the head to the neckline, which is the distance that is considered the completion of the pattern. So we measured this distance right here with this line, and then now we stick it on over here. And sure enough, you can see that the completion of this trend or of this head and shoulders coincides with an area of resistance, a trend line, pretty heavy duty trend line as well, because it's generated from the all-time high of about 19.8, and it came down, and you can see that the completion of the head and shoulders puts us back at that trend line, and that's around 12,200. So I think it's pretty feasible that we're going to see that relatively soon, within the next week. Now, in order for a really positive sign that that is happening, we're looking for the break of this neckline, which you can see it's been wicked a couple times. So we're seeing some resistance here, which is expected, because you're going to have some people that are going to try to push the price down to a retracement level before it pushes through. So if we pull the Fibonacci on that move, we may see a 38.2 retracement. I think that is possible, because you can see the 38.2 retracement also coincides. You know what? Let me make this head and shoulders less. There we go. Well, we'll do that, but let's make it a little bit easier to see through. So you can see that this head and shoulders pattern that we have here, if we came down and did a 38.2 retracement, and that doesn't make the head and shoulders invalid for it to do a retracement, then that retracement level is going to be in line with an area of support and resistance. You can see that particularly right here is the area of support in question. So that said, I think that we may see this come down and do a retracement. And if we do, that's no big deal, because the next push up will be the one that... Look at you, George. You were just scalping the heck out of it. Good job. The 8,800 purchase is not a bad one, but you may experience a little bit of drawdown down to the 8,600, 8,500 range before it pops back up. But good news is, if we do see the retracement, the next move will surely be the one that breaks through, retest, and on to the next trend line. Once we hit that trend line, we may see a similar retracement, breakthrough, retest. You know, there's a lot of areas of resistance that we have to fight through here. But if there's one thing that we know about Bitcoin, it's that we tend to see it bust through resistance zones relatively easily once the market sentiment is back up. So once people get excited about it again, then that's when we start to see the market boom. Now, another thing we need to keep in mind is this area of resistance that kind of coincides with this. So we may see this do more of that. We may see the area of resistance that we dealt with over here end up colliding with the trend line. So maybe move that down here. And so we may get stopped right here. So, I'm seeing articles in actual support of Bitcoin and less Bitcoin is evil. Yeah. I mean, we drove the price all the way down to 6,000 again, which was a pretty large correction. And so now we can see that there was a pretty clean rejection off of this support zone. And ever since then, on the hourly, we've had a bullish structure going up. So I'm very optimistic that we're going to see an all-time high out of Bitcoin during this recovery. Let's take a look at daily just for a bigger picture of what all we're looking at. Holy cow. That's way too messy. Let's go to a different. Let's go to. We'll do Bitfinex. Well, I already have this marked up too. Well, that's all right. We can clear this. All right. So we have the first opportunity for a break of structure at this area right here. And if we break through here, we're going to be looking really good for the next leg up. We had a long wick down here. We wicked all the way down to this area of support. Found pretty firm support here, and since then have been turned around. So we're not totally out of the woods yet, but the fact that we do have a really clean hourly head and shoulders leaves me pretty optimistic that we're going to see this continue up. And if we do, we'll find some resistance around this level. As you can see in the history, this has been a level that has seen a good bit of resistance. And this would also coincide with the completion of the head and shoulders or close to it. And it's also pretty important to note that we have a trend line here that's worth looking at. So not totally out of the woods yet, but I am optimistic that the market sentiment is going to drive it through that zone. Let's see if there's anything else I want to look at as it pertains to So that's my thoughts on Bitcoin, is that we're going to see something along these lines. Let us look at Ethereum. I have a lot of people asking me about Ethereum too. Man, Ethereum played how we wanted it to as well. You can see this didn't quite. We had the arrow drawn to this retracement level, which it hit, and then it did pop back up to this trend line, but it went a little bit over it. And then I'm actually a little bit surprised that we hit that trend line, but no matter. We broke back down through, retested it as resistance, and fell back down to an area of support. There's a lot of beeps going on. Now we are on our merry way again. Tons of wicks. I think we'll probably see this come up, do a 38.2 retracement in this area before busting back through. Let's get rid of some of this, make it a little bit cleaner. I think that's pretty likely for Ethereum. And this will actually probably hit there. Because you can see that that would be in alignment with, let's look. Funny how that lines up. So I think that's probably pretty likely for Ethereum. Then this will probably find resistance or find support before busting through again. And from there, we're looking to 1,000 range where we will find support or find resistance, I should say. All right, so that's what I'm thinking for Ethereum. I guess I should be posting these updates. Okay. What altcoins do you guys want to take a look at now that we've got a general idea of where we see Ethereum and Bitcoin moving? Yep, I guess it makes sense to do Litecoin too, huh? Litecoin, Neo. All right, let me do Litecoin first. Man. So Litecoin did not drop back down into the support zone as expected. So we can get rid of that arrow. But it did break through this trend line. That was a little unexpected. But it came back down and retested it, so that's a good sign. So this was predictable, right? Because once we broke through with a large green candle, you don't want to necessarily FOMO into that, because yes, you could have jumped in and made a quick little buck, but it came back down and retested the trend line, which is how technicals would indicate it's going to do. And now we are on our merry way to the top of this resistance. So I suspect that we will hit this resistance before we'll hit that resistance, do a retracement, and then hopefully this is our turnaround for Litecoin as well. You can see that we have, let me look at the big picture here. There is a trend line there, but I don't know that I consider it very valid, so I'm not going to mark that. I think that is pretty valid though. So I think we'll probably see this come up, come back down and retest this trend line. This is newly established trend line. Now I bet that right around here is probably a 38.2 retracement or something to that nature. Let's take a look. Look at that. So this area of support where we're sitting right now, I think we'll see, or I'm sorry, this area of resistance that we're at right here, the support and resistance zone, I think we'll probably see that coincide with 38.2 and before going up from there. So we're currently at a pretty good entry, in my opinion. Now we may see this come down a little bit, but we're at yeah, see, I don't know. I think we're probably going to see this continue on up, but it could come down before going up. It could bounce down another, I mean, we're only talking about 5% maybe. So really not that big of a deal. Not even. I mean, like 1 or 2%. Better entry than Ethereum. I would wait, personally, I like Ethereum a little bit better right this second. I would wait for Litecoin to come up and hit about 175 and then wait for it to drop down and hit around 160 again. And if you see it come up and hit that area of resistance and then fall back down and find support around 160, that's going to be a very bullish sign, in my opinion. Because right now, this could drop back down to 150, which again is not that big of a drop, right? But I think that we'll have a more bullish confirmation if we hit the 175, come back, do the 38.2 retracement, find support at this trend line, and then I think from there, it's a pretty safe run up to 185 to 200. So if I had to pick between Litecoin or Ethereum, I think I'd probably pick Ethereum right now. But I also just have a somewhat biased favoritism for Ethereum over Litecoin, just in general. I do like Litecoin, but another area that you might want to keep in mind. We could see this mess with some of our stuff here. So it's possible that this run will only go up to 180 before bouncing back down. But don't get me wrong, I think that this is a great price for Litecoin, because I think that Litecoin it found its floor, it double bottomed in this zone right here. And ever since then, we've had, that's what this blue trend line represents, is that we've been in an uptrend. And this has been for the past, all of February, basically. So we clearly found our floor, and we broke out of this descending triangle. This was a big deal right here. This 150 range, where we have this circle drawn, where we broke out of this really huge downtrend. Because, look at how long this trend has been going. Ever since we were at its peak up here at 420, it has been in a fluctuating downtrend to this point where we finally broke out and retested it. So, this is a really big deal for Litecoin, in my opinion. And I thought that we were going to see it drop back down one more time before it went up. And I'm thankful I was wrong, because this is an even more bullish sign that we broke out of that trend line, we found support, and we've been bullish since then. So between Ethereum and Litecoin, it's tough to say. I think that personally, Ethereum is probably going to outperform Bitcoin and Litecoin this year. I have no proof. That's just my personal opinion, that I think percentage gain wise, Ethereum will outperform Bitcoin and Litecoin. I think so too. I think by 2019, we will probably see Bitcoin in the number 3 market cap slot. It's pure speculation. I think that Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, I think Ethereum and Bitcoin Cash are both seriously underrated right now. Yeah, so my opinion on Ethereum or Bitcoin for alts. I think that Ethereum is the superior base currency for altcoins. I think there's very little evidence to support that Bitcoin is better suited for that role. I think that the general market sentiment is that Bitcoin just deserves to have that role, and therefore people respect that for whatever reason. Ethereum transfers faster. It's more adaptable. It's more flexible. It has better stability and cheaper. Now, cheaper isn't necessarily always, fees. Cheaper fees. And Ethereum is mainstream enough that I don't really see any reason why the liquidity should be in the Ethereum markets, or I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be in the Ethereum markets compared to the Bitcoin markets, other than general market sentiment keeping it in the Bitcoin markets. So I would really like to see Ethereum take over the liquidity of these exchanges with the altcoin pairs. Now, there's really no downside to using Ethereum base for altcoins, because once you spend the money, you buy the altcoin, it goes into the same place anyway. Whether you buy it with Bitcoin or Ethereum, it doesn't matter. And so really the only downside is that sometimes there's lower liquidity, and there's much lower liquidity for a pair, that it can actually cause the price to vary drastically. in some cases, because if you have 90% of the volume of the liquidity in the Bitcoin market, then that means that there's the bid to ask ratio on Ethereum pairs is skew. So I would really like to see that correct itself this year. And so for that reason, I have actually started to buy using Ethereum when I can, because for all the reasons that have been stated, it's cheaper with fees, it transacts faster, and I think that Ethereum will outperform Bitcoin for 2019. Let me take a look at Ethereum again. This is what I see for Litecoin, though. No, you're good. So if you want to be safe, you can wait for Ethereum to hit the 890, go back to the 860 before continuing upward, yes. But the thing is, rather than, I guess it just depends on if you're trying to buy something right this second, or if you are okay with waiting for another layer of bullish confirmation. Because like my dad, like I was just helping him move some money around. I had him do Ethereum as his base over Bitcoin and Litecoin, because right this second, I think that Ethereum is the better buy. That doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean that if you want to wait and see which one of these fulfills the pattern better, right? Because if Ethereum comes up and then bounces back down and finds support at 860 and it looks really pretty, and maybe Litecoin doesn't, then I would go with Ethereum. But right this second, I think that Litecoin is probably going to struggle a little bit more than Ethereum will. There isn't a lot of technical evidence for that. I think both of them are good buys based on technicals. That's just my personal fundamental opinion, I guess. Okay. Neo was the other one that was asked, I believe. Yeah, I'll mark up Bitcoin Cash next. I haven't marked up Neo in a while. Okay. Oh, good old Neo. So, sorry, I'm adjusting my mic a little bit. Neo has been performing not so good relative to the market rebound. I think that Neo actually withheld the market nosedive better than most. Because a lot of these projects came down and found like all-time lows. And if you look at Neo, it really just did a pretty subtle retracement of the 38.2. That's when all of this was late January, when everything was bleeding. We had this come down and do a 38.2 retracement, but since then it's kind of been, it's been making higher highs and higher lows. So this is a pretty bullish sign for Neo. You can see that this trend line right here is acting as an upward trend support. This right here around the 23.6 is acting as support, and that's from a previous high back in August of last year. So in a perfect world, it'd be really nice to see, where is, I don't know why I'm so out of breath today. My apologies. In a perfect world, I think that as long as we running from my haters, um, let's take the wicks out of the equation for this channel, because I think that that is a healthier representation of what we're looking at. These wicks are a little bit manipulated. So as long as we are maintaining this upward channel, I am bullish on Neo. We're making higher highs and higher lows. Now, I don't know if I've taught you guys market structure yet. Let's take a look at that. So actually, you know what? Let me make this a little bit easier to see. There we go. Good sign, smiley face. So this is called market structure, and market structure is a pretty great indicator of the overall market trend. So as long as you are making higher highs and higher lows, you are in an uptrend, and that's also seen by the channel that I drew here. So as long as we're in this channel, we're making higher highs and higher lows, then I would just keep holding Neo. Now there's no telling how long we're going to stay in this channel. We've already been in this channel since mid-January, but in general, there's not really any reason to think that we're going to break out of this zone other than maybe this top trend line. I'm trying to figure out where I want to place this end of it. Probably, there's so many wicks in this area right here. Probably right around there. So if you consider, sorry, I'm trying to tweak this to make sure that I got it where I want it. There's a trend line here. I'm just trying to find exactly how I want it to look. There we go. So we have a channel that we're in, as well as the trend line that we've came up and tapped a couple times. So we may see this start to be the end of the, and this would actually coincide with Bitcoin gaining a lot of, so maybe we see it come down and finally hit the bottom of this trend line right around here. But I think something like that is probably pretty likely, with this being a higher low as well. And then when we have this right here, this is what we call a break of structure. So this would be a break of structure. Now, whether or not we Now, what happens, I'm not even going to draw this arrow yet, because once we break structure, it's going to depend on a lot of different variables. But this right here is what we call a break of upward structure, and that indicates that it may drop more. I don't think I have a trade open. I'm pretty sure I don't have a call open on NEO though. But that's my general opinion of NEO. No problem. Dang. I didn't realize that OMG was being outperformed so much. This is a pretty good sign for OMG, honestly. It's almost a cup and handle, but not quite. Yeah. That's a little bit more relevant. So we came down and did a 38.2 retracement here. Found support. Wick to this trend line. You can see that of the Sorry, I'm just thinking. This isn't a pair that I've looked at recently. I'm trying to get a feel for what there's a lot of wicks here, so I'm trying to get an idea of what I think. Well, we had a large bullish engulfing candle right here that broke through the resistance that we had. Right. That happened right here. Ever since then, we've come back down and retested this area, which is the 38.2 retracement. So we have reason to think that this is going to continue. We have an area of resistance here. I think we'll probably see this continue down a little bit more. Next area of resistance. I think we'll probably climb back out of this pretty quickly because OMG is a pretty solid project. Now, what we may see happen after we break through this is a drop back to this level. So that's also possible. But after that, I think we'll see it climb back up. Now, if we do break out of this, it'll probably look more like this. So there is a couple different scenarios. Hopefully that helps. I will peep ADA next. Yeah, I'll do TRX next after ADA. Woo! So ADA took a little bit longer to come down to this. So we had way back in early February, we drew this arrow saying that ADA was going to drop back down to the trend line. Didn't do it right then, but has now. So this is a very good time to buy ADA in my opinion, because this is a very well-respected trend line. I think something like this is probably pretty likely. Now, this may end up being more like that, because I bet that's a retracement level. Bet you anything. Not quite, almost got it. So this would be the 61.8 retracement of that move. So I bet that's what we see. And you can see we'll also establish a new trend line here. Now this is theoretical. We don't really have any, we don't have the confirmations necessary to call this a trend line yet, but I have a feeling that we're going to form a new ascending trend line here. And if we do, it's going to look something like that. I think it's hard to go wrong with ADA at this price, if I'm being totally honest, because ADA is one of my favorite projects of the year, and we're at a very strong area of support with this trend line. We've already shown some rejection of it, right? I mean, we came down, oh no. All right, well, we're getting rid of that Fibonacci, I guess. So we came down and we hit the trend line and then had a 3-hour bullish rejection off of it before coming back down and double bottoming. So I bet you we see it bounce right off that trend line and run back up to the top of this triangle before coming back down, hitting the retracement level, laying down the framework for a new ascending trend line, which will then take us away. So that is my thoughts on ADA. TRX, I'm almost scared to look. Let's take a look though. Oh, good looks on TRX. We've got a breakout. Let's get rid of all these Fibonacci levels that are making us look ugly. So all of these are out of the question now. All right, so let's take a clean look at this. We had a very strong break out of this triangle. And then sure enough, once we broke through with 3 or 4 really strong bullish moves, we found resistance at this trend line that we had drawn. Predictable, right? Once we found some resistance there, we ran back up, did a retracement, and then busted through this area of support before coming back down and kind of playing inside of it. Now, unfortunately, this area of support has kind of turned into resistance because price came under the support level and then came back up, couldn't break back through, and is now kind of just in limbo. Now, I don't think all hope is lost, certainly. I think that if we adapt to the situation and find a new I'm not a huge fan of that. That works though. So we've got a new ascending trend line, right? We've made higher lows. Unfortunately, we really need to break through this big area of resistance. If we pull Fibonacci on this move, we've got this area of resistance at the 38.2 and this area of support at the 50% retracement. So that is a pretty good sign. Now, I'm encouraged by the fact that we are making higher lows on the ascension here. HL is higher low. So assuming this holds, we are making higher lows, but we are not breaking through this ceiling. But what that typically means is that you continue to see it squeeze between this area before finally breaking through. When it does, we'll probably find some resistance there and then be hopefully on our way. Now, this, by the time that burn comes around, now I think I've heard some of you guys talking about the burn, but once that burn comes around, we're hopefully going to see a spike in the per coin value. And that's very good news. Let's drag this into the future so we can have something to predict. And remember, these areas of support and resistance are used as historical guides. So when you're done with the time that you're looking at, you want to pull them through to the future because they'll help guide you in your technical analysis going forward. So we can now predict that there's going to be some support found here or some resistance found here because there has been in the past. And even this run up that we saw, this big bullish run right here, found resistance at the area that we previously had labeled. So that's a very strong indication that we'll probably see something like this. So there's my thoughts on TRX. All right. Oh, a lot of messages. Hold on. APPC, I'll do that one next. Sweet, I was reading the chart right then. Yeah, I read March 31st. Yeah, I believe that's when it was. Or it's just a slow burn via transaction fees or something along those lines rather than a massive burn all at once. That's also possible. I haven't honestly looked into it recently. I believe at one point it was going to be a massive burn all at once, but they may have changed that. Thoughts on XP project? So I think that the idea that XP has is really interesting. Now, the only reason I'm not a big fan of the project is because I've worked with them and I'm familiar with the team. And the team is, in my opinion, kind of a sketchy group of people. And they seem kind of disorganized. ETC been kicking ass. Now, ETC has a burn coming up soon, too. Or not a burn, I'm sorry. They have a fork coming up soon. I'll actually chart ETC. That'd be good. But XP, bottom line, I think it's cheap enough still that it has a lot of promise. There's a lot of room for growth. I happen to know that they are in talks with a few big exchanges. And if they hit one of these big exchanges, it's going to moon pretty hard probably. So is it worth throwing a few bucks into XP just to see what happens? I would say yeah. Lunar Solutions, my proof of staking pool, also has a pool going for XP if you're interested. Okay, let's take a look at ETC and then I'll do APPC. ETC I'm kind of excited about recently, so that's why I want to do this one next. This is not one that I've charted recently or ever, I don't think. So we're going to have a lot of fresh market data to look at here. All right. It's interesting that they're raining Doge and then letting you buy with it. It's kind of cool. Wow. Yeah, very positive signs out of ETC. Let me actually pull up my... Sorry, I'm pulling out my Delta app to see what it looks like. So we're up 15% today. Unfortunately, after the dip, I ended up in drawdown, so I'm only up 0.39% from my entry. 2K worth of Doge today alone? Wait, like 2,000 US dollars worth? That's pretty crazy. Oh, okay. I was about to say, holy crap. No, that's interesting though. Okay, so let's take a look at ETC. Now, this... Oh no, it's an airdrop. Sorry, not a fork. Oh no, it is a fork. Sorry, I'm taking a look at when this is actually supposed to happen. Interesting. Sorry, I can do this later. I was just going to see if we... So approximately March 5th. Now, it obviously depends on the ETC block rate and, or the, yeah, ETC block rate and the hash rate and all that fun stuff. But March 5th, so you're going to want to watch for a pump on ETC, and you may even be able to get your 100% out of it before the airdrop. So that's something to probably watch out for. But let's take a look at the chart. Let's actually go, I want to go down to the 4 hour. Okay, that gives us a little bit more marketable data. That's pretty aggressive resistance that we're sitting at. Airdrop doesn't affect the price action necessarily. And airdrop, a one-to-one airdrop just means that for every, it's kind of like a fork, right? For every one Ethereum Classic you hold, you'll receive one Callisto or CLO. And that'll automatically be credited to you if you're if you're holding it on an exchange that is participating in the airdrop. I believe Binance is one of them. I need to double check on that. But it works like a hard fork in the sense that you basically get free tokens out of it. Now, this isn't always necessarily a winning situation, right? Because if the price of ETC pumps up to the airdrop, which this has happened multiple times on forks, if we see the price pump up to the airdrop and then right after the airdrop it'll tank because people will sell the crap out of it, or people will they'll flood the markets with CLO tokens, then you could end up having just sold your Ethereum up here before the crash and then bought CLO on the market when it was, once the sell-off occurs. So it's kind of tricky. Sometimes you end up actually saving money just buying or selling during the FOMO and then buying the token back with the profits once the sell-off occurs. Because typically, once a new coin hits the market through an airdrop, people will just sell it to get free money, right? Free Bitcoin. Yes, I'll talk you guys through it. I should have, or no, I did call it Ethereum Classic, right? Did I call Ethereum Classic? Yeah. All right, cool. I thought I did. So we're we're basically break even on the trade right now, I believe. So as we approach the airdrop, I'll let you guys know if I'm going to be holding Ethereum Classic or if I sell it during the pump, and then we'll go from there based on how Callisto hits the market. Because if it hits the market and people sell off all their free tokens, then we're going to have a really great buying opportunity. But yes, I will walk you guys through that. All right. So I think we'll probably see Ethereum Classic drop a little bit, probably do a 38 retracement because that's also in line with an area of support. I'm just drawing that to the future because once we make an all-time high, right? Because we're currently sitting around the all-time high on the Bitcoin base pair. Once we make that all-time high, then it's free game. We won't know, based on technicals, we won't really know where we can expect it to drop. The only thing that we have to go off of is there is a trend line here. So we could see that. But it's going to be interesting to see. Oh. Let me drop this screenshot, and then I want to look at the USD base because that's also another good thing to look at. ETC. Let's take a look at the ETC USD. Let's go with I didn't know that Kraken actually traded the USD/BTC. Anyway, so taking a look at this, we actually have a Head and Shoulders. Oh, where am I going? I lost my Head and Shoulders. There it is. All right. That's a pretty good sign. That would also align with that trend line. So I'd say 40 US dollar is a pretty good area to shoot for. We'll probably see the 40. Oh no. Probably see the 40 USD area drop down to there, which coincides with, it's going to depend on how that ends up playing out, but I could see that as being pretty likely, right? Because this Head and Shoulders pattern, if it completes, it's going to push us back into this ascending channel. And once we're back in that channel, then smooth sailing up to the previous all-time high. Also got another trend line to consider here. You know what? I actually would maybe... Sorry, let me think about this for a second. There's a lot of wicks I'm having to look at here. I actually consider that to be a little bit more valid. And that actually coincides with the intersection of these two trend lines, which is added confluence. So yeah, this is my general thoughts just based on USD of what we will see out of ETC Classic. All right, I am running out of time here. APPC, is that an okay last one for tonight? Let's take a look at APPC. So let's get rid of all this. I'm not going to worry about that. Not going to worry about that. This is still valid. So we can drag that into the future. So pretty good sign here. We have pretty clean break out of the downward triangle that we had. General bias on APPC is that we finally are going to push out of the support zone. You can see we've been juggling around in the support zone, but we have finally broken out of this very large downward triangle, and now we've retested and are kind of still continuing in this consolidation. But even with the consolidation. So APPC has kind of been a little bit of a disappointment recently, but I think that we are finally seeing it break out of this zone here. Actually, that is more valid. So we've actually already broken out of it. That is not recent development. This is no longer valid. So that's a really, really basic markup of APPC. We had the break and retest of that trend line. And then now we're just kind of in a consolidation ever since. But the thing about consolidation is that it's not always a bad thing. It typically means that we're going to see a breakout soon. We may see something like this. I bet we see a retracement. 38.2. General thoughts on APPC. If you're not already in APPC, in my opinion, it is as good a time as you're going to get into it. I still think this is a really cool project. They have a member of their team that is from Google. He was a Google software developer for their app department, and he's on the team. And so that to me just makes me feel like they already have that insider that they need to make the project successful. I'm still holding a ton of them. I bought a good bit way up here when I called the signal. So I bought way up here. I put $2 or $3 grand into it. I've held through all this drawdown. I'm down like 200. I'm down a ton on it. But I think that this is still a project that is going to do pretty well this year. So I like to think that there's no reason to take a loss on it. So I wouldn't recommend to anyone else that you take a loss on it. What am I doing? I'm all turned around. It's only a loss if you sell. That's right. You got to think of the long-term game, because this project was really new when we still got into it. And if you think about some of these bigger players, right, you got to think that, now this is maybe a little bit extreme, but a lot of these projects, if you look at the chart, you see just a little spike right at the beginning, and then you go on to see that way in the future the price is trading right up here, and you're looking back thinking, oh well, it was all the way down here at this level, when in reality that level is what we consider really high for current market price. So it's all crypto is a long-term game, because the industry is just starting to kind of get its feet wet, so to speak. And it can look intimidating when you're looking at it like this, because you're like, holy crap, this is a lot less than it was recently. Is it ever going to go back up that high? When you got to think that, in the grand scheme of things, a year from now, this entire thing might just look like a floor. So just something to keep in mind. Helps me sleep at night. I had family laughing at me as well. And then I made my mom and my dad's salary in a couple months investing, and now they're not laughing so much. All right, let's plop this one in here, and then we will call it a night, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. As always, I appreciate you. If you have any questions, please let me know. I did record this, so I will upload it and get it in the channel for playback for anyone that's interested. Thank you, George. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, whoever you are. I'm not really sure who you are. Come BSC. All right. Well, as always, if you guys have any questions, please let me know. I am sorry for all of the Ember BS that I've been dealing with, but rest assured that I'm not going to let it become an issue for you guys. I'm going to continue to try to make the most out of the service. Everyone have a great rest of your night.